Hello, and a warm welcome to and from Basel, your ecosystem to thrive in as an innovator and investor. You are in very good company. We have more than 100 registrations from corporate startups, from research, from many countries, not just Switzerland, many countries, including the USA, France, Netherlands, Brazil, India, Philippines, and Australia. To warm up, please write your current city into the stage chat, which you can see on the right side. This is the one we'd like to use throughout this conference, throughout this ecosystem conversation, to make sure that the information reaches us. So we'll focus on the stage chat. That's for the ones who use Hopin for the first time. And it's fantastic to have such a diverse audience because we have a big vision. We want to bring the thriving ecosystem to the next level together with everybody involved. My name is Daniel Ginter, and as Director Entrepreneurship, I'm responsible for the ecosystem strategy for Basel area business and innovation, and to help as many people and organizations as possible to innovate, collaborate, and to invest successfully. I am very excited to be your host and moderator today and to jumpstart the conversation and collaboration with you, with the ecosystem. So it's my great honor and pleasure welcoming you to this first ecosystem dialogue under the name Learning from Success and Failure. It is the first in a series of 3 this year. This format runs under the label of Networking Event Series and is supported by InnoSwiss, with the goal of connecting people and creating new and powerful networks between the economic and research sector. So connecting research, academia, startups, corporates to be innovative and successful together. And that's also why we are here. We start the conversation on important topics for the success of the ecosystem. We connect and engage with you, and we identify areas to work on together. We want the conversations and collaboration to happen between the events, and we want to highlight and energize what is happening during the event, so like today. Some words about the platform and the program. Questions that you have and that come up, as I said, please post them whenever they come up into the stage chat. We will not immediately address them, we will collect them and use them for the Q&A session at the end. Also, Hopin, this platform, offers the possibility to do polls, which we would like to do. Polls will show up with a little red dot in the chat on the right side, so you know when you need to get active. Unlike Zoom, where you have a pop-up and you cannot miss it, here you have this little red dot, you have to click on it, and then you can answer the questions. And this is a great way for you to participate and for us to know and understand your thoughts. So let's do a short test now and do a first poll together and see if that works for everybody. If there are questions, then you would just write them into the stage chat. All right. And when you answer the questions, you will immediately see the results of the poll. All right, so let's go and look at the program for today. So first we'll start with the latest entrepreneurship study by Professor Rolf Meyer and Dario Meyer from the University of Applied Sciences, Northwestern Switzerland. Then this is followed by the panel with Dr. Elena Gross and Panos Papakonstantinou from Novartis, and of course the two presenters of the study. And this again followed by the conversation with you. So we're opening up the conversation with the audience so you are able to directly interact as real time as possible to interact with the panelists and ask your questions. So we're really able to have a conversation, have a dialogue, and not just do a broadcast. And after the Q&A session, save a little bit of time for the networking possibility. So you have the opportunity to use our platform to meet new people, like at the physical conference, meet your fellow attendees. It's a 3-minute speed dating here on the Hopin platform with the option to exchange your contact details from your profile after those 3 minutes, if you like. If you don't want, you just switch to the next person. I'll explain how this exactly works from the functionality at that point when we activate it. So right now we want to focus on the study, then the panel, and then the Q&A session. Let me now briefly introduce our great innovators, entrepreneurs, and researchers that we have here with us this evening. We have Dr. Elena Gross. She has a background in neuroscience from the University of Oxford and a PhD in clinical research. And as a former chronic migraine patient, she is founder and CEO of Keto Swiss and helping other migraine patients to be pain-free as well. Professor Rolf Meyer is Professor for Entrepreneurship at the University of Applied Sciences of Northwestern Switzerland. His research focuses on business model innovation and entrepreneurship. He is head of the MBA program in Windisch and co-founder of several startups. Dario Meyer is a research associate at the University of Applied Sciences of Northwestern Switzerland. He is a business coach in the study mode Entrepreneurship on bachelor's level and researches entrepreneurship and startups. And then we have Panos Papakonstantinou. He is Global Commercial Director, Mobility Solutions at Novartis. Panos is a key decision maker for Novartis on in-licensing opportunities and providing disease area expertise for a new digital therapeutic. As a digital leader and entrepreneur, he empowers his team and creates impact through simplification and a digital commercial approach. Now, let me stop sharing these slides and bring on stage Rolf and Dario for the presentation.
So, thank you very much, Daniel.
Thank you for being here. Very excited now to learn the latest on the state of the entrepreneurship ecosystem here.
Thank you. So good evening, everyone. My name is Rolf, and together with my colleague Dario, we'll give you a short introduction into a new study we conducted a few months ago about the startup scene in Switzerland. We'll also add it with a few information about the ecosystem in Switzerland. We are both from the University of Applied Sciences, Northwestern Switzerland. We have a center of competence in entrepreneurship, so we do research in the field of startup, determinants of success, but also the ecosystem with all the incubators and the other players. We also do social entrepreneurship, female entrepreneurship, and business modeling for existing companies as well. Now I hand over to Dario, and he will give a short introduction to the first study.
Great. Thank you very much, Rolf. Also, warm welcome from my side. As Rolf already said, my name is Dario, and I'm also from the university. I want to give an introduction into our study that we conducted last year on the new self-employed, how it's called, and why we do this study or why we did this study. We have done a similar study in 1999 and 2009, where we already surveyed all the new companies, all the new founders to see their state. And we wanted to to continue this row and do it again in 2020. There is quite some statistics around on the ecosystem. There is the startup radar that you might know. There's the Swiss Top 100. Global Entrepreneurship Monitor is doing studies in Switzerland as well. And we have the Federal Statistic Office that does studies. What we found is lacking in most in-depth studies is that they focus on innovative and venture-funded and scalable companies. It's like mostly high-tech startups, and that the whole area of low and no-tech startups is usually neglected. And we wanted to bring or analyze the whole startup system and not just this tiny bit of the high-tech startups. So the goals of our study was to find out who were the founders. We call it 2020. We analyzed different areas. On the one hand, we analyzed who is the founding person, what's their statistics, what's the demographics. We analyzed the new companies. We looked at them. How big are they? How much capital is invested? Which legal form they have? We looked at the success that they have. Are they successful in terms of money, in terms of turnover, in terms of happiness as well? And we finally looked at the development prospects. How optimistic are founders about their future? Do they see that their business is going to thrive also in the future or not? And finally, we asked the founders about their social approach. Do they have a bigger goal in mind? Do they have a sustainable goal in mind? Just to see where they develop in that area. And the second goal was, of course, to see the changes that happened over the last 10 and 20 years. So we could compare with the studies from 1999 and 2009 to see how the entrepreneurship sector in Switzerland has developed over the past 10 and 20 years. As already said, we went with a very broad definition of business formation. So we didn't focus on scalable or innovative companies. We really looked at all companies that were entered into the commercial register between July 2014 and June 2019. They could be innovative, imitative. There was no other reason or any other factor that counted other than a founded company in that time period. When we look from that definition at the numbers from the Federal Statistic Office, we can see that it applies to around 40,000 new companies that are founded in Switzerland every year. And they create around 50,000, a bit above 50,000 jobs each year. That most companies start pretty small. They only employ an average of 1.3, 1.4 people per founder. And also an interesting fact in that, as the topic is also about failure, that 50% of the businesses are out of business again after 5 years of operation. So there's quite a big failure rate in the startup and entrepreneurship scene. And what have we done? We did a written survey based on the questionnaire from 2009 to make the results as comparable as possible. We took a representative sample of the commercial register of all the new companies that entered into register between 2014 and 2019, which was around 11,000. So we sent out the survey to around 11,000 companies. We sent it by email, were available, and by mail to all of them. And we got responses of close to 400 people, and which is around 4.5% of the companies that were contacted, which is unfortunately a normal number in today's survey landscapes. What did we find out? We of course have loads of results. We had around 300 variables that we looked at. We just wanted to briefly present you a few of them. One very interesting fact that always leaves people puzzled is the average age of the founder. When we ask people about the age of founders of startups, they usually assume it's around 30, maximum 35 years. And they would never guess that the average age of founders is actually above 40 years. And that's not just the case here in Switzerland. Also, when you look at the US or the Silicon Valley, where we always have these stories of the young founders, also there the average age is in the same area. And when you look at US-based companies that do IPOs and exits, they even have an average age of the founder in the time of formation of 47. So this whole myth of the very young company founders, they of course exist, but in average, they're much older than what we think they are. And with the age of over 40, of course, they are also very experienced. In average, the founders have 22 years of professional experience, which they, of course, can use as a base to start up their business. And the average entrepreneur has graduated from university, which is a big change to 10 and even 20 years ago. Nowadays, more than 50% of founders have a university graduation, either PhD or just bachelor or master's. We see mainly two reasons for that. Firstly, it was probably the foundation of the Universities of Applied Sciences. As you can see, the share of professional vocational school graduates who found a company has declined from 25 to around 10%. And we guess that those people often have gone from vocational school to University of Applied Sciences, and therefore that the number has risen because the university graduates have multiplied at University of Applied Sciences. When I started, for example, in 2005 at University of Applied Sciences, we had 6 classes in business administration, and 2013 there were already 28 classes at the university in Winterthur. So there's loads of more students around than it was 15 or 20 years ago. And the second reason is, of course, also that universities have recognized that entrepreneurship is an important tool for the development of their students. And while 15 years ago or 20 years ago, not many universities had their own programs, these days every university have their own entrepreneurship programs, their own incubators, and their own ways of supporting the students in becoming entrepreneurs. And the average founder is also male, which is probably not surprising, but the good news is that it has doubled since 1999 and is now close to 1/3, which is of course still not the number we would like to see, but it has increased, and we hope that it increases further in the future. Then an interesting fact is also why people start their businesses. And the main reasons are intrinsic motivation. It's about being independent, implement your own ideas, about self-realization, about doing your own thing, and things that you would, or many people also associate with startup founders, like a better income or the higher reputation recognition, are very low and are at the bottom, and only around 10% see the recognition and the income as the driver behind their business. So it really is about the passion, the motivation, and those kind of things, and not the recognition and the income. Then we have 2 graphs that show that self-employed people are happier than they were before. On the one hand, we asked them how they developed in regards to happiness compared to before becoming self-employed, and only 4% of the people said they became less happy, and striking 87% said they became happier since they become self-employed. And also this statistics shows this again. We asked the founders, would you take a similar job offer in a employment relation? And only 10% said for sure they would take it, and the big majority would not take a job offer that they would get offered. This also shows that founders are happier in their self-employment than they were before. When we look at the companies, as we've already seen in the statistics of the Federal Statistic Office, that the companies start rather small, and most of them also stay small. Today, the average time is between formation and today is 3.5 years. So 60% start alone, and still 40% are alone after 3.5 years. So most startups really start small and remain small. There are a few startups that grow strongly, but they are in the single-digit percentage. So not many companies grow strong. The same when you look at the capital, 75% of companies start without or with less than 50,000 Swiss francs, capital, and a very small share of 5% needs more than 200,000 Swiss francs at the beginning, and this rises to around 10% after 3.5 years. So both statistics show that most startups or most entrepreneurs start small, start alone, and also remain small and remain alone or with 1 or 2 employees. And one last very interesting statistic that we thought is that the entrepreneurs in Switzerland really want to be innovative, and they want to improve or produce new products. They want to improve or create new processes. And this year we also asked for the first time how they look at their business model. And a quarter of the people, 25%, wants to not just improve processes or products, but actually improve the whole business model, and which leads to a lot of opportunities also in regards to what we as an ecosystem can offer to the businesses in regards to how can I improve my business model. When we look at a few of the recommendations that we got out of the report, with the big number of graduates that start a business, over 50% of the founders, the universities are very important in the whole ecosystem. On the one hand, for the students that they have at the moment, but we see also for alumni. There's this other study called Guest Study that looks at the intention of students to start their business across the world. And if you look at Switzerland, it's only 2.3% of students want to start their business straight after university, but 20% of students want to start their business after 5 years of having professional experience. So there, I think, is a big opportunity for universities to offer also their services in regards to entrepreneurship for alumni as well. Then the second point is with the still too low participation of women in the entrepreneurship surroundings. We did a separate study on female entrepreneurship, and one of the main recommendations out of this one was that you have to use more female role models when it comes to events, case studies, media coverage, that represent more female founders. And we, for example, at the university, try to implement that now as good as possible. And when we have founders telling their stories in class, that we bring in more women and have events on female entrepreneurship to support that. We also asked the founders, where do they have difficulties, in which topics they have difficulties in setting up the business, and while running the business. The main issues were the fundraising, customer acquisition and marketing, and the accounting. And for training providers, that's the areas that we should focus more on and that we should put an emphasis on. An interesting point for us was also to see who the founders go to when they have difficulties or when they have questions when starting up their business or while running the business. Most go to their family and friends and to former colleagues. And what's interesting is that the state offers are hardly taken, like the state offers, for example, of development agencies of the cantons, and they are hardly taken. And we see that these offers are good, but that they are not visible to the startup founders. So it looks like better marketing could support the founders and the whole ecosystem there. And the last point is a bit the business model, that many companies want to develop the business model and want to innovate their business model. And there we see that we can offer also as universities education programs that focus on that topic, not just focus on startups, but also on SMEs and other companies, that we can teach them or bring them on the way of how to do a business model innovation and how to put the business model innovation into practice as well. And lastly, an outlook on what we plan to do with the data that we collected. One study we want to do is on the success factors, like what do companies or founders see as the success factors to their survival in the economy. Then we are currently doing one on female entrepreneurship, where we also have 2 master theses that have been done on the topic, and where we can compound the knowledge and do a bigger study. We currently researched the topic on senior entrepreneurship, where we look at the founders above the age of 50. How do they differ? How do they come into entrepreneurship? We look at the social and sustainable startups, where we also have 2 or 3 other studies that already have been done, which we can combine and make a study on how sustainable startups are. Is sustainable startups a trend that will go on? And that's going to be a very interesting topic. And finally, we'll also look at migrant entrepreneurship. One of the variables that we asked for is whether people have a migration background, and we want to find out whether entrepreneurs with a migration background are more successful, have different issues, just to see whether there is need or the possibility for a different support offering that the ecosystem could offer to those entrepreneurs. And with that, I would like to hand back to Rolf.
Good, thank you very much. We also did a small survey and also a project about the ecosystem. And what we did, we collected the information of about 300 initiatives in the ecosystem. So we made a database with 300 players, and there are about 450 activities. This database is available, accessible. You have the link here. You will get the slides afterwards, so you can use it, but it's not yet that user-friendly. That will be the next step. On the next slide, we see about the institutions. So we have about 60 incubators in Switzerland, like the Technopark, technology centers, and so on. We also have about the same number of venture funds and business angel networks, but we also have many cluster initiatives, startup competitions, foundations, universities, innovation labs, research centers, and governmental institutions. So we have many, many actors being part of this entrepreneurial ecosystem. On the next slide, we have a look on the activities. These are about 450 activities these 300 actors offer. And we see that most of these activities, they are not focused on a specific phase. We have divided the 6 phase according to the Startup Commons. That's one of the international organization in this field. And most of them, they're open to everyone, meaning for every phase of the startup in their life cycle. And if they focus rather not on the first few phases, but rather on the later stage. So we do have a lack of support in an early stage of a startup, and we do have much more support in a later stage. We also did the analysis about the fields in which support areas that they offer their services. And also there, the big majority is not specialized on one field. And if they're specialized, mainly their funding. So these are the investors. Most of them, they offer 2, 3, 4 areas. And mostly covered is coaching and networking. These are the most popular. And if we have a look at the least popular area with 4%, that's the access to technology. So not many support is being given when it comes to technology. So the support is being given for infrastructure and coaching in more the business part, in how to get access to the market, how to prepare the financial statement and so on, but less in really the hardcore field of technology. I think there's also a lack. Now we also did on the next slide which industry they focus, and also there the big majority is not focused on one industry. If so, it's either IT or life science, but most of them are open to everyone, to all industries, or then they focus rather on life science, ICT. These are the biggest ones that can be seen here. Good. When we take this together for our conclusions, first of all, we have many, many institutions. So the ecosystem is very rich in terms of amount of actors, but also activities with the programs they have. These programs are very dynamic. They change quickly. Those we registered, the 300, many of them will not be active in 3 years from now. But meanwhile, also many new will pop up. The number and the name of the institutions behind will not change that quickly, but many institutions, they raise money for 3 years for a project. They run an acceleration project for 3 years. The funding runs out, and it's easier for them to raise money for a new project, so they start with a new one. And the old activity dies then. for the startups themselves, it's quite difficult to find the right institution and the right activity based on the industry, the need they have for support, but also the phase they are in. So the transparency is not given, and this project here, where we are in the middle, is actually one step that should help the startups to find their suitable institution, their suitable supporting project. Most of the activities are not focused, and there we see room for more focused, more specialized activities, that we have support for biotech startups in an early phase, for example, or that we offer some other specialized support. Also room for activities focusing on technology transfer from universities, from research institutions to the spin-off and startup world. And what we try to do, that will be the next step, we will adjust this database, we will make them more user-friendly, we'll have a nice user interface that everyone, the startups, but also consultants can go there, say, well, I'm based in Basel, I'm from artificial intelligence, I need in an early stage, I need money and coaching, and I will see in this tool which institutions, which players in the ecosystem can help me. And that's something we will do, and hopefully together with you, startups and partners, players in the ecosystem, also promote it then, of course, for free. Now, that's in short introduction about the survey, a few numbers about startups in Switzerland and the ecosystem. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rolf and Dario, for this great presentation, for these insights. I think there is a lot of very relevant data, also the suggestions, what can be done, in which areas to improve. So thank you very much for that. Also to understand who's founding and why. I'm glad to see that female entrepreneurship is increasing in numbers, also that you have such a systematic approach to enabling the ecosystem. I think that's great for us to work hand in hand and to work with the ecosystem players. I think together we can achieve a lot, and this is the big vision that we have. Now let's welcome on stage, let's welcome in Elena and Panos to start our panel. To the audience, I hope you can hear and see everything well. And please remember to post your questions during the panel for the Q&A session. So you post your questions on the right side in the stage chat. So it reaches us, and we will be collecting them and integrate them in our conversation in the Q&A between you and the panelists. Also, there will be some more polls, one-click polls during this session. So please answer those as well. This is a great way for us to engage. So Panos and Elena, thank you very much for being here. Panos, maybe we can start with you as a global innovator, innovation transformation leader at Novartis. What are your key takeaways of the entrepreneurship study?
So, Daniel, thank you. And first of all, a big thank you for the invitation. Rolf and Dario, congrats on the study. Very thoroughly done. Loved every bit of it. I really, speaking from a bigger pharma company that's really looking into this space, thinking about how we involve ourselves into the startup scene, the entrepreneurship, and thinking also how can we really leverage innovation in a way that it's meaningful, in a way that it's scalable, and in a way that it actually can fit into the bigger engine that a bigger company might actually look into absorbing the parts that really make sense in a meaningful way for patients and for health broadly. So I think that one of the key things that I loved about the study is the fact that we're seeing more and more, as you rightly said, women come into this space, and even a spread which is very much more evenly balanced across the board, which I think is fantastic. Some of the things that I think are very much consistent with what we're seeing from our side as well is the fact that there's a lack of focus, if you will. And let me take a minute to explain this. Sometimes some of the startups starting to looking into one space and quickly a lot of ideas, because this is in the nature of entrepreneurship, come in mind, creativity and thinking about the space in a broad sense. So it's very easy to start having more ideas that one can actually look into. And even in some of my sessions, because I'm also there as a mentor for some of these startups, one of the key messages that I'm kind of giving back is don't be afraid to really be focused. Say the very simple thing that one person is doing, or your app, or your technology, or your solution, or your AI model is doing in a very simplistic manner without being afraid that this is too little. And in simplicity, there's a big power, yet because you really can easily convey what one is doing. And keeping your eye on the ball, as they would say, and keeping that focused laser narrow in one specific area can actually transfer that message across broadly in a bigger organization, in many organizations. People appreciate the simplicity and the focus of this team and can think, okay, while in this particular area that might not be a great fit, there are 3 others that this would be an excellent fit. And I think the more modular, the more focused, the more impactful these solutions are. So I definitely loved that point that came out of the study as well. I have 2 more comments, and which are more or less from a takeaway point of view, is that this is a very wild space, right? So you see so many companies come into the space, new entrepreneurs want to try in more stuff. So keeping that overview and making sure that you keep it consistent, making sure that there is a pool of accessible startups and companies that can actually have a value offering in a specific area is always relevant. And at least speaking from our side, thinking that when a potential area of interest comes in mind, we usually reach out and say, hey, which companies are working in this area? And then it would be fantastic if someone magically just pulled out these top 10 companies that really do the trick, right, and are into this space. Because in many cases, even myself and others are saying, okay, do we know anyone doing this? And then we have to sit back, look into kind of even reach out to search engines or to the known parties or to research to actually find who is doing what. And I appreciate this is a lot of effort. People are, this is a very live space. Focus changed, as we said, and new companies are coming in the foreseen more and more. So it's very important for this work to be consistently done in a way that it's also accessible for us. And the last space is access, right? So I think there's so much information, there's so much pure innovation, there's so much creativity out there, and in many cases we just don't know about this, or these information is not accessible, and potentially thinking that one can actually pull out one specific value from one area, from one team, combine it with something from another team, and build on top of this something bigger, can actually get us into a product or into a value proposition into a customer much quicker. So I believe that it's a time for partnerships. It's a time for accessing a lot of this innovation in the pool sources that's out there. There's a lot of talent, and in many cases, just because either don't know or don't have access into this area, we fall back into what we usually call is reinventing the wheel. And And I think that we should kind of move past this this mindset and start thinking about how can we partner, because together we can get somewhere much much further in the long run. So I think it's very much about my key takeaways. It's focus, overview, and access. If I were to kind of really combine, I love the survey again. Thank you so much for doing that. I mean, there's a lot of potential.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Panas. I think you bring a lot of very good points. And sharing also the examples, the challenges that a large organization may face today. I think the point that you make came with open innovation. So there is so much going on at the cutting edge. It's hard to know in detail what it is because it's changing so quickly. And on the other side, there is also the need for simplifying. So your recommendation is very good. That startups say, this is what we do, this is what we focus on, then it's possible to find them under this keyword, basically. And it's also clear how to create partnerships. And that's why today an organization, the next evolution, the next level after open innovation is having an ecosystem strategy or innovating with the ecosystem, to be very, very clear what it is that you as a large organization are looking for, and that you can also contribute to the ecosystem, and be very clear about this messaging so that startups on the other hand also know with what value proposition they should be approaching you. We work on creating more clarity, more visibility on what is going on, and also what kind of support offers are there. I think this will allow us to systematically support along this journey from idea to innovation, to startup, to bigger company, and help partner with the right organizations such as Novartis, such as other players, of course, in other industries as well. And I think this allows to create to create more clarity and simplify to the degree possible, while still leaving the space to be wild and crazy and innovative, which we need, which is the wonderful thing about innovating and startups for sure. So we have a successful female entrepreneur and researcher with us, Elena. You as a researcher and founder of Keto Swiss. Why did you become an entrepreneur?
Yeah, hello everyone. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Yeah, it's a big question. Why did I become an entrepreneur? I think the major reason was that I had to solve a problem that was affecting myself and was taking away my life in a way. I had chronic migraines, so I was in pain at least 20 days out of a month, so over 50% of the time, sometimes 30 days. And it was just really hard to basically do a job, study, and get everything done that I needed to do. And I couldn't imagine a life having that issue. And by the time I was deciding what kind of a master's degree I need to do or want to do, my migraines had turned chronic, and I was very sure that I could never do a normal job anyway. So I figured maybe within my master's degree, I can figure out, or within my lifespan, maybe I can figure out what migraines are and what I could potentially do about it. And then maybe it was fate that towards the end of my degree, I stumbled across something that would eventually give me my brain back. And having made this discovery, I then spent 4 years at my PhD in Basel working on this issue. And actually, at first, I went to Novartis and to other companies, and I thought they might just want to license my patent and put this onto the market. But it was early stages, so nobody actually did. And at this stage, I think if it wasn't for the Novartis Biocamp, I might have never had the courage to actually found a company myself. I have to say I owe Novartis basically I owe Novartis my company, because it was this 3-4 days of an actual live case study on what it is like to have a biotech. And we were put into, I think, 9 different teams, 10 people from different backgrounds on this case study, working on this day and night. And it basically, it kind of put some light on the big unknown business world, right? So the unknowns for me are always the most scary, because you don't even know what you need to know and what the problems are, let alone do you not have the answer. So in this event, I finally realized we won the case study. I got an individual prize, and I was thinking this scary business world might be something that I could actually learn with time. And so after this This event, I actually had the courage to then say, well, if nobody wants to bring this onto the market or license the patent, then maybe I just have to do it myself. And then through learnings and the great Swiss entrepreneur environment, I found more answers and more questions. I guess it's important to know what you need to know. Attended events, started the company, got more people involved, mentors and advisors that without which I wouldn't be here today. But I suppose to answer the question a bit more brief, I had a personal problem that was so significant that I needed to dedicate my life to this issue anyway. Then I stumbled across a solution, and that pain turned passion gave me the courage to venture in this completely unknown business world and found a startup in the end. And Novartis helped greatly along the way. I think they abolished this program, which is sad because you didn't have to have an idea what you want to found a startup on, and you could get some practical experience on what it actually means to do business as a scientist. So it was scientists or students from all around the world that were put together there, and that kind of took my fear away that this business thing is something so magical and unknown that I could never learn this. And so I guess these things together, and I was able to get a patent and write it, the first one. I think that helped as well for the founding. And I also met somebody who gave me a loan to actually start an AG, which was very beneficial as well. So a lot of luck also came together so that I could do this. But those were, I think, the major points for me.
Excellent. Yeah, that's. I mean, it's a very personal story. So thank you for sharing that with us. I think it's the example of a real pain point. I mean, like not just a business pain point, but real turning the pain into a solution, and not just for you, but for how many people worldwide have migraines? I think it was up to 1 billion people.
It's actually 1 billion. With varying degrees. So we are working on a prevention, not necessarily an acute treatment. Potentially it could be extended into acute, but that means prevention means you take it every day to prevent the next attack from happening. And for that, you need to look at the higher frequency, medium to higher frequency migraine cases, but that still leaves millions. Yes. So 1 billion with any kind of severity. It's actually the third most common disease in the world after dental caries and tension type headache, and yet there's not that much attention and research focus on this disease, and also actually funding going into migraine research. And there have been recent very, very great advances also with Amgen and Novartis in the CGRP monoclonal antibodies, which are injection-based preventatives for migraine, and that has caused some publicity. But prior to that, I feel like migraines still have been frowned upon quite a lot at the workplace. I mean, for me, it's been stigmatized as a psychological issue quite a lot. Maybe this is also because it's mainly a women's problem. I don't know, hysteria. I think 20 years ago, it was still seen as hysteria. So we've come a long way, and I hope we go even further than we are today when it comes to migraine treatment.
Yes, thank you for contributing to that. Literally taking pain away from millions of people. Like Novartis, I think that's that shows the importance of life science of that industry. Of course, there are other pain points in other industries as well, but I think you provide a very good example of the fear of the unknowns that may keep people back, smart people, researchers, and other people who don't know what to expect. And the big value that you have when you can join a program where you have like-minded people to exchange, to see you're not alone on the journey. And then you have a group, a set of mentors, of coaches, you can ask when you know what are the specific questions, or who can show you potential ways forward. I think this is very valuable. This is also part, I think I mentioned the entrepreneurship curriculum. So we want to really make sure there is a lot more clarity on the journey. I mean, yes. One are the personal stories. They are inspiring. They motivate you to do something, but then also to have systematic support. And the traditional education is just one track. It's an important one. We need to know the basics. But then how to translate the theory into practical experience and feel good about it, or at least, continue until it works out. And this is a key point of today's session. The failure is in the end, something turns out differently than expected. You spoke of stigma. I think in many countries, this fear of failure is a social stigma. In different countries, in the US, it's like, yeah, let's do it, let's try it. Once you failed, or when you've not failed, you're not a good entrepreneur, basically, because from failures, which are painful to everyone, then you learn, and then you know how to do it better next time. And I think it's a big shame when people don't start because they fear this pain point or what other people may think of them. I think there are a lot of very good ideas, technologies, and possibilities, possible solutions that are not yet put into the world and not yet put to use to solve the problems, because people just fear of what might happen. So we want to take away the fear. We want to connect the ecosystem. And stories like yours, your experience, or from you, Panas, and the findings from the study, I think these are powerful puzzle pieces to creating this this positive energy and this good track in the ecosystem together.
Yeah. If I may comment on this briefly, from my experience, I mean, being educated in the science space, nobody ever really talked about anything like patents, or it was all about the research and publications. And I thought, I mean, I was educated in a way that I thought I can remain a scientist in my life, and that's about it. For me, it was already kind of outrageous that I was able to write a patent, which is not a science publication, and it kind of wasn't even that hard. You know, so I think we need to also raise awareness in especially, I'm not sure what it's like at a business school, but I'm sure you would probably get more training on how to set up a company or how to go down that route more, but you're just not exposed in the life sciences or in any kind of the hardcore sciences to anything that relates to, I think it's changing, but in my day and age, nothing was about alternative routes to research, basically. That's it. So these platforms are amazing for even just, alerting people to the possibility and that it's possible with a science background to also do something else and even like be a CEO, which is at the time I couldn't even. If you would have told me 5 years ago, I would have thought you're crazy, right? So, yeah, just that from my perspective here, I would have loved something like this earlier on so that I could have prepared better and maybe even started earlier. Mm.
I think it's a great example. Thinking about the different, let's say, industries or angles. So when we look at research or academia, what is incentivized, basically, making sure that there is more awareness for the ones who don't want to stay in research, but also want to turn that to commercialize and bring it to the economy, to make sure there is a bigger overlap between the business knowledge of setting up a company, the legal knowledge, what around IP, about patents and related or regulatory topics, and the scientists. And I think that's a great opportunity for support organizations, for accelerators, but in particular also for universities and universities of applied science to step into, in collaboration with big companies where there can be an exchange on specific projects. You can grow close, and this is something that we work on, but it's a very good example that you make here. Thanks a lot.
And maybe we even have to get the professors on here, because you know, when you're a student, you're at university, the model how it works is you're dependent on your professor for 15 years of your science career, and he decides what is published when and what are you researching on. And I feel like there's always this conflict between publishing quickly and before the competitor might, and saving something that might be able to go into a patent. And we know without patents, without something that you could protect, you can't really put it as well into a business and into a successful commercial business. So I feel like a lot of good science, great science is lost in university, not lost, of course, but not really translated into anything because it's been published too early, or the professor had a different agenda or didn't want you to commercialize or something like that. So I think we can even extend this platform to other stakeholders that might need to know a bit more about business, which is also the professor level at the universities.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. I see Rolf and Dario nodding. I also wanted to ask you next. Two things are on two levels, and please choose what to answer first. When we look at entrepreneurship as a process, as a learning journey, as a journey of learning the theory and then putting it into practice and improving and iterating and getting through the failures and getting to the next level. Also looking at the average founder age, which is fairly high. When should we start? When should people start in their careers? Why do they start, let's say, that late? Because they need that long to learn about the industry and build the networks and the confidence? Or what can we do? Or should we do something about it? What can a university do? The University of Applied Science has always been like very practically oriented, outcome oriented for tangible solutions. How do you create the next generation of entrepreneurs and startups?
I think you mentioned the main challenge. Fact is, and I think that's nor good nor bad, it's just the fact that the average age is 40. Has many advantages. They have a lot of experience also in the professional work. They have a better network than students. And they start, at least in Switzerland, rather late in their career with the entrepreneurial activities. That means for us, we have to prepare them at the age of 20 to 25, that they are ready when they turn 40 to set up their company. So our main task is kind of to plant the virus. It's a good virus, the entrepreneurial virus, that they have the awareness that setting up an own company is something cool, something great, something challenging. And the second task is then to prepare them with the skills and tools they need. And of course, also the network that they know, I can go back to Rolf at the university, ask him if I need help, even 10 years afterwards. Or they know we have a center there. Yes. On the other hand, we have, of course, the politicians, we have the board of directors of universities. They want to see many spin-offs. They want to see that students, mainly also on the later stage, master and especially PhD students, set up their company immediately, that we can say, hey, out of the research, we have 3, 4, 5, 10, 20 spin-offs every year. That's in reality not the most likely case. Much more likely is that they do it later. And we have to do both, preparing them doing projects right now, but also preparing them that they know that it is a possibility. It's something that is possible also for researchers. It's not hard rock science. The management part is really not hard rock science. That's absolutely learnable for everyone. And I can do this. Also selling something is something one can learn. They have to get the confidence that they can do it. And so we train them with many, many different activities. I think very important are role models. That's number one, that they see people like Elena, having been at the university 5 years ago. They come back and tell again their story. They say, Elena, it's a clever lady, but it's not someone that is absolutely out of my range. Elena is a normal person, as many other researchers as well. That's a compliment, not a negative to you. That's someone reachable for them. They say, they've been here a few years ago, they do this, they can do it, it's cool. And we have to do this not only under the label of entrepreneurship, to say, hey, we have a summer school in entrepreneurship, we have a module in entrepreneurship, that should be everywhere in the studies. Even if they have a science topic, that they invite an entrepreneur talking about science and the transfer to the reality, to the real world, to the corporate world.
Very good.
Can
Dario?
maybe add one point on the process and the journey? You mentioned the US before, Daniel, where like failure is much more accepted and there's a different risk aversion. I think that's also quite deeply culturally rooted. And that we also start with not teaching a business plan, but teaching the mindset of entrepreneurs already in primary and secondary school. That we, for example, play entrepreneurial games where they have to set up the lemonade stand with $20 and make as much profit as possible, just to get into the mindset, into like calculate the price, to negotiate, just to get those things a bit going, that they know from very early age that entrepreneurship and starting a business is an option that they could choose in the future.
And mindset means they see opportunities. If they do research, they see, that could be used for this and this. I could create benefit for this and this target group. If they have a problem, say, what could be the solution? Could that be the starting point of a company?
Mm-hmm. I think it's an excellent example. Let me ask you one thing there, and that links to the advanced age. I think it's very important to show alternative ways and work with role models as to why Elena did take this journey and what went well and what was challenging. And also having an honest and a transparent conversation, not like, everything was easy and it always feels good. I mean, we know it's hard when you don't have the loan yet, or when the bills come in, it's difficult to be an entrepreneur as well. I think we don't need to sugarcoat that, but it's possible and it's very rewarding. You mentioned this opportunity perspective and seeing opportunities. How do we provide or help bridge this knowledge gap when you just start and you need to validate and you need to know what kind of customers and customer segments there are to be able to connect a solution with a customer need? So I think this might be a reason why it takes for some entrepreneurs, or the average entrepreneur, it takes many years of industry experience to uncover those pain points and gaps that are not yet addressed, and then see those opportunities. Do you see a way of finding a way around that, or what would you suggest how to achieve that? I think going out there early and setting up the stand, I think that's a great experience, but how do you create this bridge between the knowledge that you need and you don't have that much experience yet, then an opportunity and the customer need, or the customer need, and then creating an opportunity and out of that? If that makes sense.
For me, yes, or not.
To anyone who likes to answer.
Two-part answer. I would start even earlier. I probably would try and integrate some kind of entrepreneurship course in any bachelor's degree at a university. This could be just 1 hour, just to basically tell students this option is out there, because you might not even know that even as a social scientist or a scientist, you can found a startup and it's not that hard, and there's a support system there, just to plant the seed or the virus, as Rolf has said, very early on. And then the idea and the research can grow. So for me, I was still in a PhD. Not everybody's doing a PhD, but I think the best thing for me was that I was still somewhat employed, and I was able to start the whole process, the market research, learning how to do market research, seeing whether this could be something that we might find investors on while still doing my PhD. So it was kind of more like a transient process where I could slowly ease into it and learn. And as you said, the customer market fit, it's something that one needs to experiment, but I think it's something that also grows on you with experience and with all the mentors that you're meeting. And in order to answer that question, it's somebody who's just out of university, you need to know what questions you need to ask, right? You need to have some kind of a knowledge to address this problem properly. So I believe that the network and having advisors, mentees, maybe people that have gone through this before, fellow founders a year ahead or two, is essential, but you won't have any of this when you're just out of university. So this is why I think starting it early, establishing a network, connecting with other founders who have done that before, and then it can be simple things like a digital mock-up and a questionnaire in your network. Just figuring out, there might be some people in your network that fit your customer perfectly, and just figuring out within those 20, 100 people, is this anything that could have potential? And then going a step further, and then asking your mentors whether this is a good idea or not, or how to do it. But I really think, I like what Rolf said before, we should be planting the seed earlier so that people can go through periods of trial and error while they're still at university, and they can play the startup game while there's little risk involved, and learn how to do things, and then evolve the idea, change it, pivot, and so on, while they're still young and have little income that they need, or families to take care of, or houses to pay off, and so on.
I think that's a great example. Also around the mindset, which is very much linked to culture and to experience. So working with these role models and these stories, that makes it very tangible. I think this is very relevant. for going one level back, or what I thought in different contexts from my university, from Stanford, from other places, I think ultimately, or my suggestion would be to find a way to spark the curiosity in people, so they speak with others and try to understand what they do, where they stand, what they want to achieve, or what their pain points are. So to have these conversations, to build the network based on that. And I think the more you learn through those questions, the more you learn about the real world, and the easier it becomes to find your customers, but also to develop solutions that work in the real world, or when you have an approach and like design thinking, so you empathize, you speak with customers, dozens, hundreds, or with a lean startup approach, you have an idea, but then you really go out there, you don't inflate and invest your ego into that idea by creating a massive business plan and working years on that. You have an idea and say, I think this is a problem. Then you reach out to people and say, is this a problem? What I think, let's have a conversation around that. And I think this combined with systematically providing role models, providing support and information about that, I think this could be a good way forward in this journey, and also allows to interact. And I think corporates or existing organizations play an important role. They know what the customer pain points are. They know what the industry problems are. So having established organizations, industry experts, speak with the students and have role models in the room, I think this is a very good combination to create this exchange. And maybe before we go to the Q&A, a last question for Panos, because also as an entrepreneur, we were speaking about entrepreneurs now and how you start maybe as a researcher, but from within an organization, I think the mindset is also really important. What are your concluding thoughts maybe on that, Panos? And maybe for the audience, if you have a question to any of the panelists or a suggestion, please start typing those now into the stage chat, which you have at the upper right corner of your screen. So we're able to discuss those points in our upcoming Q&A session. Thanks a lot. Panos?
Thank you. So I think I love the discussion. There are a few points that I kind of noted as I think everyone was kind of putting it down. I think that a true entrepreneur needs to have a genuine passion for an area and a learning mindset. Having that passion is the key motivator, and that inquisitive mindset is what gets you looking into resources, people, validating questions, validating hypotheses, and so forth, right? So, and with that, I think that that's very much the exact same skills or driving areas that one would need also within a corporate environment, right? What we would actually call an intrapreneur, right? So it's very much thinking, what's my passion, right? So what change do I want to see in the world? And then within a broader environment, there are teams and people looking into the exact patient needs, looking into the exact customer needs, and thinking, okay, these are validated needs. These are problems that are desperate for solutions, right? And some things have been tried in the past. Some people are working in other areas. This goes back into the accessibility and overview points that we also kind of put up and saw and picked up in the study. And then thinking about, okay, let's try this. Let's give it a go. And think about every attempt, which will, chances are, will lead to failure externally and internally within a company. Think of this as deferred learnings, right? Things that one can take back and say, okay, this wasn't the exact approach. Let's try something which is a bit more different. And then through this continuous pivot and these iterations, you can actually get to solving a true need quicker. And I think the more specific you can be in the need that you can solve, because usually you find that you can't boil the ocean, right? You have a limited set of resources, a limited set of time that you need to prove that what you're doing makes a difference. So even if if you pick up a huge problem, you need, like, it's an elephant, you still need to slice the elephant. Pick up one approach, think about a quick win, think about something that will make the difference, that will get more parties interested in believing that this is the right approach, and then continue investing. Because the investments and the resources are limited within a company and outside a company, a big corporation. You still need to think about where and who will support this. How do I get the direct sponsorship? And yes, you might not be selling directly when you're in a bigger corporation to a customer, but you're selling what you're doing internally, which is very much looking into what are the perceptions of what you're doing, thinking about actual value, and thinking about delivery. And these are things that one needs to keep in mind, whether you're inside a walled garden or whether in a bigger corporation or outside, right? So you still need to go through the same ideas, and I think that that's very much in an entrepreneur's DNA, right? So that's very much about I think where the two worlds meet.
Excellent. That's an excellent case. I think overall, there are many, actually, you look at the entrepreneurial perspective and how you identify a problem, you turn it into an opportunity, then you do something about it, you get the buy-in, you get the advice to validate, and then once you've found that it is a problem, how you can realize it, how to create a team, how to get funding. Internally, it might be even harder than for the startup entrepreneur, depending on the organizational culture or on your boss or however the structure is set up. So in the end, I think it's a very multi-layered approach. And I think this shows how collaborative the ecosystem needs to work together to create the transparency, to create the trainings, which is partially theory, of course, but then also in a practical context to connect people, to have, let's say, more junior students or junior people with the industry experts, or the more senior people with the role models who've already done that successfully. And for me, this is how to create the powerful ecosystem that we would like to see. We need to have, and we need to see entrepreneurs who are successful come back and share. And I think that the good thing is that usually entrepreneurs have that mindset. They want to give back. They want to share that. It's almost like the parent generation to the next generation of innovators. They can show and they can explain from their experience what was difficult, what were different ways and possibilities. And this over time helps to change the mindset and the culture. I think this is equally true for an organization, for a corporate, or for an entire ecosystem, or for an entire country. And I think step by step, we can achieve more and better, more successful startups, and also use innovation, leverage innovation to create impact and positive change that we want to see. So I think this is a really nice example, and also a great opportunity for us to address in one of the next conversations, where we might be focusing more on entrepreneurship, how corporate startup collaboration can happen successfully. And yeah, I think these are really valuable insights. Thank you very much. Let's see, for the questions, the time is progressing. So I would suggest we would go to the Q&A. I can see we have a question from Helena. Thank you very much. Congratulating Elena on the excellent input for the basic translation and entrepreneurship knowledge from the bachelor. So she loves that. And then she has a question generally to the panel, the lack of focus that Panos, you were mentioning initially, how to counter that and when. Maybe we can use one specific example for the startup. How would the startup simplify, and how to get rid of that lack of focus while still being open to, trying things? Or maybe from the corporate perspective, is there also lack of focus, and how to counter that? Yours to choose.
Yeah. So it's an excellent question, right? I think that there's one model that we're using in the team is very much kind of a ruthless prioritization matrix, right? As we like to call, right? So most likely you're thinking that on one hand, you're thinking how impactful is the feature or the approach or the new service or solution or anything, idea, how impactful is it, right? So that's the first part. And then there's a second part which really has to do with how easy is it for the team to take that on, right? So how many degrees from success are we from actually achieving it if we were to throw ourselves fully behind it, right? Of course, you have your overarching vision, you have kind of a North Star that you're kind of getting towards, but that's usually an umbrella vision. You have many different individual aspects that kind of either pop up along the way or more people bring up along the way or new ideas are coming in. So every now and then, which for us is every 3 to 6 months, we usually pull up all the ideas, think, okay, let's spread them out and think about impact versus achievability in a sense, right? So, and then you just pick out the top right corner, right? Pick up the 3 top ideas that have the biggest impact and the team is best set to achieve. More ideas are coming in, of course. You come back when you feel you're doing too much, bring them back into this kind of prioritization matrix, and then just put everything you have behind it. That's the one thing. And the other, which is usually the more difficult aspect of this, is the stopping everything else, right? So you might actually pick out 20 things, pick out the top 3, and then guess what? You have to stop the other 17. And this is the difficult thing, right? Because you probably have invested time, effort, passion, and many other aspects into this, but you have to pull the switch, right? You have to rethink everything back into this new area. And that's, I find that the teams which are much more agile in the way that they're doing this actually shift quicker into the potential areas that have the most impact, of course, under the vision and the area that they want to achieve. So that's potentially one model that works for us. I think that would be also something interesting, even for startups to try.
Yes, absolutely.
Maybe I can add an example here as well, if I allowed. Good.
Please,
company I support in the field of artificial intelligence, and they came to me and said, we have cool idea, a new technology, we can use it in this field. It's part of an HR process. We can use it. We go through the internet, we collect data, we can adjust it, have smart algorithms, we can use it afterwards. We can use it for this industry, we can use it for the recruitment at universities, we can use it for the venture capitalists as well. And they had a list of about 20 different products they wanted to do for 3 or 4 target audiences. So that's a matrix of 80. At the end, business units. As I forget about it. Choose one target audience, the most attractive one, the one you have easy access to start with, and one product. So you have a 1-to-1 matrix instead of a 20-to-4 matrix. So make it as simple as possible. Focus on this. And then also from the process, they wanted to extract the data themselves, which is sometimes quite difficult. You need licenses depending on where you get the data from. And then you have the algorithms, and at the end you have a user interface for the clients. The data, you can get it because other companies do it already. They extract the data. You can buy them. So forget about this. Focus on really the thing that is new. You add value and you create value for the clients. So from the process, do less, but that's what is really innovative, and focus on one business unit. That's all. So simplify and massively. And that's not just an extreme example, that's daily business. When high-tech startups or tech startups contact me, they have huge ideas and say, yes, let's do this, but do it right, please.
Maybe
Excellent.
I can answer the other part of the question, which asks when to focus. So I'm going to play a little bit of a devil's advocate here. I agree with everything that was said, but I think in initial stages, if it wasn't for losing focus, I was procrastinating in the library, looking randomly at this Nature magazine, which had the solution for epilepsy in there. Keto Swiss might have never happened. So I think there's stages where you want to, on purpose, lose focus, because this is what's going to make you creative. So for creativeness, losing focus is actually the best thing you could do. Later on, once you found a potential solution, I completely agree that focus is everything. So to the last part of the question, when should you be focused? I believe it's once you think that you have a viable solution. In defining a solution to a problem space, I would even encourage not to be too focused, to daydream sometimes, look at other things, because it's these slacking moments where you're procrastinating, where you put knowledge that you already have together in different ways that you not had before. And that is when unique solutions come out of those procrastination or lack of focus moments. So yeah, prior to solution finding, lack of focus might even be beneficial. I'm just going to say like that. After you have found a potential solution, get rid of the other 10 for now. Yeah, so. Okay.
Excellent examples. Yeah, I think, as you say, one is the exploration phase, when you want to be as broad as possible. And I think there are two elements, and it's for the startups and for Panos. Panos, you described your decision-making process, basically, your funnel, and I think this is very important. One part there is to also remember which stage you're focusing on. When you're focusing on very early stage ideas, then it's much harder to predict, of course, the impact, because it's not clear yet how it's going to be executed. When you look at later stages, you de-risk and you can be more focused on these ventures. I think in the beginning, it's important to have a relatively broad funnel. As you said, maybe you have 20 topics, and then you de-risk and validate, and you become clearer and clearer, and you say no to many things. And for the startup, that means once you have your point, that's what Elena said, once you have your pain point and your solution or your feature, then you say, this is what we want to do. And that helps you to clearly and simply communicate to others what it is that you want to do. And then they can say, yes, that makes sense. They understand it. And it becomes tangible, or when it's good, it's also becoming investable. So I think looking at the evolution of an idea and of different startup stages is important, and deciding as an organization, in this case, as a big organization, as a corporate, to decide which stage of a technology are we interested in. Are we interested in hearing what might be the next big thing in the far future? And then be really broad about that? Or are we more interested when there is already a proven market for this and the company is established, the startup is maybe in Series A, Series B, and then I think it becomes much more of a business case. I think early on it's a learning and discovery case, and afterward it becomes more and more a business case, which is more tangible and more quantifiable. And I think that might also be answering a little bit of Helena's question. So it depends on what it is that you want to achieve. You need to be clear about what you want to achieve and how, and then you can decide at which stage you need to be more open, and at which stage you need to say, okay, we focus on these 20%, or in the end on these 5 or 3%, like a venture capitalist, narrowing down a funnel of possibilities into what it is that you ultimately want to do.
Of course.
And just so I think this
yeah. So Daniel, I love the thing about the risking, right? So in a pharma company, you can appreciate that we spend a lot of time on managing risk for our drugs, for our process in general. I think the risking is one of the most important aspects in this funnel, in this selection. One advice I have for startups and entrepreneurs is when assessing risk, because this mostly is a subjective exercise, one in almost all cases needs to go back into customer insights and end user, if you will, validation, right? So that usually is one of the rule of thumbs that really tell you whether you're actually on the right path and managing risk in a specific way, or whether you actually need to pull in more effort and so forth. So I think it's a huge topic, and it definitely is one of the areas that keeps us awake and daily involves us in assessing and prioritizing in almost all exercises that we do.
Excellent. Thanks a lot. Yeah, I think decision making and having a structured approach and a process to doing that successfully and systematically together with others, reducing biases, reducing risks, and increasing the probability of success of a venture. I think this is what an entrepreneur is permanently doing. I think that's a key part of the mindset. And I think some aspects of that can be taught. The decision making for sure can be taught. Frameworks there, and there are a lot of support tools, mind tools that can help clarify complex decisions. And I think then a lot of it is the magic is in the doing. Looking at the time, I think Rolf, you wanted also to say something about it. Maybe we can see if we have a last tip for the audience for the next generation of startuppers or entrepreneurs or innovators that we would like to share with the audience before we then go over, and I'll explain in a couple of minutes how the networking works, so we get to create these new connections and create new opportunities with the ecosystem. Rolf, what would be your comment or also suggestion?
I mean, for the startups, the founders, I will leave the word to Elena and the others. I would address my last word to the universities. I think the universities should also change or at least adjust their value system. In research and science, the highest value is publications in good journals. That's the main aim. And the rating of professors is mainly or almost exclusively based on these publications. And that's not the same as entrepreneurial spirit. Also, entrepreneurial activities should be rated. So this dimension should be included in, at the end, everyone, all the professors as well. And then the ratings would look differently. The main problem there is the risk of failure is much, much higher if you start with entrepreneurial activities.
Yeah, I think it's a very good point. The incentive systems in the end are key to achieving a systemic change. And we also had just another great comment on the systemic level from Helena. Thank you very much for being so active. So I think this is a very good point. Shifting from the publication, which of course, when we think about the organization, is content marketing for the smart university, which is great, which attracts new talent. But then having the element of value creation for economy and society, I think this is a critical transition to make. And I think that will have to go hand in hand with the economy, with the startups, with the corporates who have the insights into the customer needs, into the industry needs, and working hand in hand on achieving that. And Elena, made also a great point, including and helping professors to understand how this works, that yes, the publishing is very important for the research side, but that on the other hand, there you work hand in hand with the ones who transfer the knowledge, the basic research into tangible value and into new ventures. I think this technology and knowledge transfer, this is an important role for the university to play in the future. And this will also be happening in a collaborative manner. And this is something that we want to achieve. I initially said we want to bring the ecosystem to the next level together as an ecosystem with the key partners. And I think this shows very clearly how universities, startups, corporates, investors, and also public organizations, support organizations like Basel Area need to and can work hand in hand to making this happen step by step by step. An excellent point. Thank you very much, Rolf. Dario, would you like to share a last, also an idea or a recommendation for entrepreneurs from what you've seen and know? What would be your best tip, your best advice to somebody wanting to start?
Very short, just start. Just start with your thing, because that's the problem that many people have in their heads. They think they have to think everything through. They have to be 100% ready. They have to be completely sure what they do. That's definitely true for a very research-based company like Elena is doing. But for many low-tech companies, really just go for it, do it, try it, and put down the barriers in your head.
That's excellent. Yes, I think this is very important. I think it's good to think and look at your situation and
Absolutely.
Be very clear what you want to achieve, how a journey could look like, but not be stuck on like this. It needs to be following this exact plan. Be clear about what you want to achieve and why, so how this links to your passion, and then be open to exploring in which ways you could achieve that and speak to many people to build the network. And then create small, and that's of course from the lean and agile way, build small hypotheses that you want to test, that you say like, oh, I believe that this is a problem that this type of customer has. And then you go talk to that customer or a couple of customers, and then they will tell you if it's a problem or not. And in doing that, you can de-risk, you can progress, and you also build your confidence in the idea. Or if it changes, then you know you haven't lost anything, you learned more, and you can evolve it. So I love that. I mean, getting started, you need to start with the first step, and this helps to turn theory into practical experience and figuring out what works.
Exactly.
So this is an excellent tip. Thanks a lot, Dario.
May I add something as on like last words from my side?
Yes, please. For sure.
I would say those fancy business words and all of this that can be learned at the beginning, common sense goes a long way. What I would encourage everybody who wants to start to do from the beginning is start building your network, because in the end it's much who you know in addition to what you know. So, and that takes time. Building trust takes time. And with regards to network, my experience was give and you will receive, for sure. It's the best way to network is offer help and you will get help in return. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you very much. Yeah, excellent. Yes, I think that's, in the end, that's not just for entrepreneurs. This is, for me, how people should work together. And when you're interested, you ask about the other person and you identify what you can help, and you have a conversation and you build the trust with each other. This is how you build the network, and this is the foundation for satisfaction and long-term success. Excellent. Thank you very much. So I think this was for me, it was a very dynamic, very interesting conversation. I think we touched upon many topics, starting with the great insights from the study, seeing positive developments, female entrepreneurship picking up, gaining interesting insights on the average age of the founders and why that might be, and also deriving actionable insights, and everybody contributed great perspective. Panos, thanks a lot for sharing how you do it, how the process looks like at Novartis, and Elena for your story as well. I think in the end, we see the same, or an entrepreneurial journey can happen and can be looked at from many angles, from startups, of course, which naturally come to mind, from a corporate angle, from a research angle, but in the end, it's about the individual who has an idea, who has a passion or sees a problem and wants to do something about it. And the best suggestion there is be clear about what you want to achieve, and then you'll figure out a way how to get there step by step. And together with other people, it makes it's more fun. It reduces the risks, and it's part of this journey, the life journey, entrepreneurial journey. And I'm very much looking forward to our future exchanges between the events. Now, I'd like to share. So, thank you very much again to all of you for your time and for your energy and for transparency. I think it's a foundation. I hope the audience enjoyed that as well, and is also inspired to share their stories, to share where they stand, what they want to achieve. And please also reach out if you have questions beyond and after our session tonight. Write to us, write an email, post on LinkedIn. Make sure your questions reach us, or your plans and your needs reach us, so we're able to connect. Now, connecting and network building, this is why we're using Hopin. We have a functionality here. I initially mentioned it. It's a 3-minute speed dating. Once we activate it, you have 3 minutes. You're automatically matched with a person who also wants to network. You have 3 minutes to exchange, to briefly introduce yourself. And at the end of this interaction, and please keep it short, it's really 60, basically one minute pitch and then a conversation. So it's very short about who you are and what you want to achieve. And then you can decide if you want to exchange the contact details from your profile. And then there is a rotation. And how it works is on the left side, you see networking now. And when you click there, you will be leaving the stage. So thank you to everybody again for being active and participating tonight. And then the networking will start. We will share the next events, next conversations, turning technology into impact on June 8th at the same time. And the third event this year will be technology-enabled ecosystems, happening on the 7th of September, also at 4 p.m. CET. We will be sending the information in a follow-up email, or always on our events website, the Basel area website. You will find this information. Or you can send us an email to innovate@baselarea.swiss. And again, thank you very much. Enjoy the networking. Enjoy the evening, and see all of you soon. Let's bring the ecosystem to the next level together. Thanks a lot.